Welcome to Shade and the City. I am your girl Treese, and we are here to get beyond the gates. Okay. This is gonna be episode 79 and 80. That's Monday and Tuesday of this week. So if you haven't already, all my BTG Shade Squad and all of our new viewers, go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already. And please, it's a whole vibe over here. So please go ahead and subscribe. Okay. And y'all, this is good. This is good. I actually say I think I liked 80 more than I liked 79. But either way, both good. Love seeing all the men in one room. It's just nice. It was great. All right. But I'd love to know your thoughts. So don't forget to drop down in the comments like y'all always do. Y'all always know the assignment and follow direction. So I ain't even gonna give y'all that. But yeah, let's get into it and let's get shady. Okay, y'all. Episode 79. So it starts off with Martin being at the country club. He's in the locker room. He looks at his phone. And I love when it was just so black. I'm sorry. And he's like, he looks at his phone. He's like, these people are trying me. Okay. So he leaves a voice note for Zach, which we met Zach, who had come over that one time and told him about Paolo or somebody who had gotten beaten up. But that's Zach. Okay. Um, and so he lets Zach know that tell his fellow representatives that he's not voting until the funds for the affordable housing have been earmarked. Okay. Y'all not going to play with me. All right. So then Martin realizes, well, I'm not alone. Like he hears something, you know what I'm saying? He always feels like somebody's watching him. You know what I'm saying? And so, of course, then we get, I'm going to just call the thing a thing. We going to either get the bigoted bus boy or the creepy racist because we just got to call a thing a thing. I ain't even going to call him the YT man no more. He's a creepy racist or he's a bigoted bus boy. Whatever y'all want to go with. Y'all let me know in the comments, okay? Yeah, so he shows himself and he starts antagonizing Martin about the rich boy that he is and you know where he comes from. And he's like, someone like me would never be able to get into a country club, but maybe with your help, Martin, things can change, okay? And so Martin at this point has his fist balled up and he's ready to knock him out. And so Martin calls the bigoted busboy Kenneth. So I guess he has a name. I don't care what it is. Okay. I'm just saying it now. I don't care. All right. So then the bigoted busboy is toying with Martin, like, oh, if that's really my name. And then he says something to Martin about, you know, you're kind. And so Martin's like, what do you mean my kind? And he's like, enough with your performance, okay? And he's like, what exactly do you want? So the bigoted busboy says that he wants to see Martin squirm like a worm on a hook. And I said, not them using fishing references. They're listening. I told y'all, but anyway. Then he goes on to say, especially after that night, and ask him, do you remember that night? So Martin doesn't say anything, and bigoted busboy realizes that, oh, so you being cautious with your words, because what you scared I'm wearing a wire? And so he keeps talking junk, and then he eventually strikes a chord when he brings up how pretty Samantha is, and she's just getting so big, and so Martin at this point loses it, and he yoked him up against the locker, and he said, "You better keep Ponytail's name out your mouth." Okay, he hit him with a Will Smith. All right. He just didn't slap him. He should have. He should have. That deserved a slap. But, you know, and yes, I did say ponytail. I said what I said. All right. So Martin lets the creepy bigoted busboy know that he's trying. I know you're trying to blackmail me, right? So what do you want? What do you need so I can get rid of you? And yeah, bigoted busboy said, yeah, one payment ain't gonna get it. Okay. I need, I don't need a lump sum. I need, he wants to be on an affirm type of situation. Okay, he wants, regular payment, and then goes on to say that he plans to have a long profitable partnership with Martin. So Martin says, you know what, you're blackmailing, shove it. Okay, and so then of course bigoted busboy tells him, you know what, you should consider it reparations. And that's when I said, okay, it won't be no Kenneth over here, not today. Okay. Martin is like, why do I owe you compensation for something that you set in motion? And so bigoted busboy tells Martin, um, look, you ain't gotta respect me, but you will fear me. And he tells him, and if you miss one payment or you step out of line, you'll make headline news. And so Martin's like, do you know who I am? Do you know who my family is? Like, you must have forgot. You know what I'm saying? And he warned, and he's like, we can make you disappear. No fingerprints. Okay. And so, of course, bigoted busboy asked him, if he has so much power, why you ain't used it yet? And I said, clock that, T. Can't say nothing to that because that was a very real question. I had to give busboy his things, even though I don't like him. And so Martin ain't got nothing to say to that. And he tells him, you know what? Keep your payments on time and answer when I call. Have a nice day, respectfully. And then said, oh, and stay where I can see you too. Don't think about running or, going off or getting the dip it, okay, to Costa Rica, nothing like that, because I will find you. Okay. So Jacob has walked into Off Jeans to meet Kat. And she wants to know, well, what are we sitting around for? So she tells him that, look, you better tell me if the lab have the results back so we can take, crazy ass Leslie pick 6 down. Meanwhile, Leslie happens to be in disguise, but not really in disguise. Like, I immediately knew it was her, but okay, they got to play with our mind a little bit. But she's sitting up at the counter. So she just comes over and has a seat. I love her, forwardness. You know what I'm saying? So she just comes over and takes a seat with Kat and Jacob and said, well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about me? Because, hey, here I am. All right. The Kat's like, look, crazy bitch. We're having a private conversation and I need you to go find another table to haunt. And so Leslie said, I know that, I know I'm the big bad Miss Bitch. But you were running your mouth about me. And so I'm tired of y'all trying to frame me for crimes that I didn't commit. And Kat says, look, we're just putting you on blast for who you really are. And Jacob is like, look, the two of y'all stop this because this ain't getting nowhere and this is not going to end well. Smart man, Jacob. So Jacob is asking her, like, okay, what do you want? And she lets him know that she's decided. Well, first of all, she said, okay, well, we're having an adult conversation. So, Kat, go play with your dolls. I said, oh, no, you did not try to son my girl like that. So he lets, so finally Jacob's like, what is it, ma'am? Leslie accuses them of trying to plant more evidence on her and said, what are y'all trying to prove this time? And Jacob asked her, are you done? Are you done here? Because you ain't really said nothing. And so she said, well, I feel like in order to protect myself, I should just join the investigation team. And I said, I've never seen this level of delusion. Ever, 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 ever. Never. Okay. Um, and so Kat, I love Kat. Kat said, oh, the delusion is real on this one. So she tries to convince, so Leslie is trying to convince Jacob that if they work together, they can really figure out who did these horrible things to Laura. And so Jacob was like, who said anything about Laura? And so Leslie tells him, you know what? It would be better to work with me than against me. And I said, the fact that y'all are still letting her sit here at this table and talk is already went above my head. Okay. There's that. Now we see Danny on the phone. She's negotiating her model contracts, some legal stuff when she has a daydream of Bill telling her that he could offer her help with her contracts. And, Danny knows this isn't real. And I was like, thank God. Because I was like, not Danny going crazy too. But she's just really confused on why she can't get Bill off of her mind. And then she has a flashback to the hospital and him thanking her for, checking up on him. So it looks like she's getting ready to pick up the phone and try to call Bill, but Pamela happens to walk in and tells her to put the phone down right now. Okay. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And so Danny tells Pamela, "Come on in, girl." And so Pam accuses her, she's like, "Oh, see that little bit of irritation? That's a little a Bill Hamilton alarm that's going off." Okay. And so Danny tells her, "Look, you're right. You're right." And so Pamela's like, "Why would you invite more rejection into your life?" And I said, "Sometimes you just really got to have real friends like Pamela." Okay. And Danny says, "Look, I just want to call." And Pamela said, "So that man cannot answer you?" So Danny's like, "You don't know that." And then she admits that, she has been feeling differently about Bill since after the stroke. She thinks, and the whole mortality of it all, and we talked about that with the whole DNA situation, has really put things in perspective. And so Pamela keeps digging and asking if it's really about Bill's health. And Danny talks about how seeing Bill struggling to lift his arm, she didn't feel like the wrong ex-wife anymore. And she just felt like his Danny. And I said, "Oh, girl." But I get it. It's been years, right? They were married for a very long time. So Pamela's like, "So even with Haley standing right there, you still thought you were just his Danny?" And I said, "Thank you, Pamela. You really got to have a Pam in your life, okay?" And so Danny says that, what Haley can have several seats. And then she brings up how she wishes she could have made Bill flatline. And Pamela tells her that, there has to be some type of middle ground, sis, okay? That was a bit of a stretch. Either, there has to be a middle ground between you wanting Bill alive and wanting him back, okay? Then Pamela tries to talk some sense into Danny about pining away for Bill when she has Andre in her bed. And I said, let's not forget that. Let's not forget about Andre, okay? Even though I think he wants to be in Ashley's bed, which is so bothersome to me. So Bill comes over to see Vernon, and he talks about, he's talking about how much he loves this Kane. This is let's call him Big Daddy Bill. Big Daddy Kane, Big Daddy Bill. That was fresh off the dome. But anyway, so he tells him that people see a man with a cane and think wisdom, authority, and danger. And Vernon tells him, "Look, you're gonna need all three for this challenge, okay?" So Bill mentions, so our little blast from the past is back, and he making threats. And Vernon tells him, "You didn't think I summoned you over here to witness your piss poor attempt at a pimp walk, did you?" So then Vernon tells Bill that they need to discuss the problem at hand and what they plan to do about it. Bill responds, "Well, the last time I checked, I don't have a problem. You do." And so Vernon lets Bill know that this isn't his courtroom and he needs to dial back that little attitude that he got. I love Vernon checking Bill. I absolutely loved it. And so Bill asks, "Well, why would I do that?" And Vernon asks Bill, "Have you forgotten who you are?" Because I haven't forgotten who I am. I said, "Ooh." He tells Bill, "Let's get to it." So Bill says, "It's not affecting me." And Vernon reminds him that you were there from the beginning. So you'll be in the fall. Okay. So Bill starts going on about every request Vernon has ever made of him and how the mighty Duprees always call on him to clean up their mess. And he's like, and so Vernon said, "Oh, so you was expecting me to grovel at your feet?" Bill says, "No, I just want a genuine apology for how the family has treated me and my wife." I said, "Oh, Bill, you doing a lot. You're doing a lot, brother." Okay. And so Vernon reminds him of how he treated Danny. And I said that part. And he tells him Naomi and Chelsea still carry the scars and talks about Bill's audacity to come in his home demanding an apology. And I said, clock it, Vernon. So Bill says, "You know what? This is a two-way street." And he brings up how they've been treating Haley. And Vernon tells Bill she's earned all that disrespect she received and said, "And if anything, I've treated her with restraint and will continue to do so. But lets Bill know I don't owe you." And I said, I love this. And Vernon said, look, brother, I'm trying to throw you a life raft. So Bill sees this as an offer to bring him back into the kingdom. And Vernon tells him that ship has not just sailed, but hit an iceberg and sunk to the bottom of the sea. It gave me everything I needed. Okay. And Bill wants to know, well, if I save the day again for this family, what's in it for me? And Vernon tells Bill what he stands to gain is that he does, if he doesn't make this right, he'll wish he never came through those gates in that rusted out ride, thinking he was good enough for Danny. And so Bill says, well, I regret getting into bed with y'all in the first place, and that was the worst mistake of my life. And so Vernon lets him know that he's about to find out what regret really is if he keep playing around. And he reminds him of all the power players that he introduced him to, and how he's woven into Bill's success. And he's like, there would be no Bill Hamilton law office without me. And so, of course, Bill is like, no, I've paid my debts. I've worked hard. And Vernon reminds him, yeah, you've paid your debts, but debts come with interest. I said, that's right. And he gives the option of correcting the situation that he mishandled. And Bill said, you know what? I'm not playing with you, Vernon. I'm not doing this. So he threatens that, look, if I got to make a statement, I will make sure to let the people know what occurred and that it's your fault or you had something to do with it. And so he said, he puts Bill on notice before he leaves and tells him, look, wait for my call because we're going to need to move fast. And I said, well, I'm glad that we're doing something because the bigoted busboy is getting on my nerves. I'm ready for him to leave already. Now, Ted is giving Eva the rundown on his new office and what he expects from her as his office manager. She says she's ready to do whatever. So he made it clear that, Kat just didn't manage the office. She connected with the staff. And so he lets her know that, you're going to be a whole one-woman HR department. And you'll be, the point of contact for the office renovation. And so then Eva just, I guess, can't handle it. It's just too much. She feels overwhelmed and tells him that, he needs someone experienced and qualified. And that is certainly not me. Girl. And so then she leaves and he lets her. I was like, was he supposed to chase you? Okay, girl. So now Nicole runs into Eva at the hospital after she done ran out. And so she noticed that in Princess, I ain't even calling you to the front for a bad. I ain't even calling you to the front of the class for a bad reason. You were right. I am a little upset with Nicole. I didn't like this. I said, Nicole, I don't know what's going on, what we're doing here. In the words of Deborah Cox, how did we get here? You know what I'm saying? I don't. But anyway, so Nicole notices that she's all upset. And so Eva asked her, when I worked with you, was I really good or were you just being nice to me? And so Nicole said, well, even though the work relationship ended in not the best way, you were good at your job. And so she tells, basically Eva explains to her that she's worried about messing up her new job with Ted. And so Nicole's like, no, you ran my office flawlessly despite everything, right? And so Eva admits that, I'm worried about filling Kat's shoes and plans to tell Ted that she's not interested. And Nicole tells her, well, look, if you don't want to do it, cool. But if you letting your anxiety convince you not to do it, then yeah, you need to go for it. And well, I'm not like Kat. I didn't go to debutante school and all this other stuff, and I just don't know. And so Nicole was like, well, let me teach you one thing that they teach you in those things. All right. And she said that the hardest part is doing the thing and it's believing you deserve it. And I said, oh, how sweet. Okay. So now Kat, now back at Offrey Jeans, Kat has told Leslie to get out after she speaks of her delusions of moving forward as a team. Okay. And Leslie tell her it must be exhausting to be this pressed. The two of them are great. And Jacob checks her and says, look, Kat has done more detective work in 6 months than you've done honest things in your entire life. And so Leslie's like, you know what? You guys are on a witch hunt. And said, but I've reached out to an old, powerful, expensive friend. And she said that he laughed so hard when he heard about their case. She thought he was going to need his stroke medication. So obviously she's hinting at Bill, which I was like, when did you ever go talk to Bill for to be your counsel. And I don't think Bill would ever help you. I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm wrong because money is money, but I don't foresee that. Did I miss something, y'all? Y'all let me know. Um, so then she realizes that Kat and Jacob know who she's talking about. And so she lets them know that they both should be expecting to be served. And so once she leaves, Jacob finally lets Kat know that the DNA results are in, and it's a 97% match. I thought that was what he said, 97%. But Kat thinks that, cool, that's what we needed. Let's go. What we doing? And Jacob lets her know, nah, we gonna need a little more than that. That still ain't enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. And he said that they can prove Leslie had a helmet at some point, but not if it's the one from Laura's accident. At least that's what I got. If I mess that up, y'all correct me, because that's just what y'all do. Virtual co-hosts. That's what y'all here for, okay? Now, Vernon happens to be on the phone professing his love to Anita when Anita, or her voicemail, I don't know, but we know it was supposed to be Anita, when Martin happens to walk in and lets him know that the bigoted busboy wants 100 grand, not like the candy bar. Okay. He also shares that he wants continuous payments and favors and plans to be around for a while. So Martin is like, yo, maybe I should just come clean because this is a lot. This is a lot. And so Vernon said, oh, no, you damn sure can't do that. What are you talking about? I just had to sit here and have a conversation with Bill for you. What are you talking about? And so Martin tells him, look, grandfather, I can't keep living like this. And I'm back at where I was maybe a week ago. Vernon, this boy is clearly mentally suffering. And then I wouldn't even be mad if they wrote into the script that they flew Martin to some facility to help him get better or work on himself, or him and the smarty kids went on vacation somewhere while they handle business. But to continue when we see that every time anybody speaks, or, he has one of these get out moments where he's sitting there shaking in the chair, I don't know. I just think it's crazy to make him keep suffering like this. But anyway, Vernon says, oh, well, you don't have much longer. Let it play out. There's too much at stake. Nigga, what? Nigga, who? Okay. So Martin wants to know, how long are we going to allow this to play out? Because I'm literally losing my mind. And so Vernon tells him, we're going to have to wait and watch and see what happens. I said, you ain't going, y'all know me. I tell y'all I'm actively in therapy. You ain't gonna be messing with my mental health. That's just, I ain't got it to do. And he seems like he is really struggling. Okay. Now Bill is on the phone asking somebody. I didn't get who it was, so y'all let me know, my virtual co-host, that basically he might have to take more permanent measures, I guess, with the bigoted busboy, and tells him just be ready. So then Tomas walks into his office, and Bill lets him know next time he does that, he gonna be fired if he don't knock. And so Tomas is confused because he's like, the door was kind of ajar, but okay, and said, well, clearly it must have been serious business that you was discussing. And Bill warns him, look, you'll learn in this business, sometimes the less you know, the better off you are. And then he walks off. Okay. So now we get back to Danny's house, and Danny and Pamela are going over legal and insurance documents for the agency when Danny has a flashback to a conversation between her and Bill about his phobias with doctors and hospitals. And she basically suggests that he talk to someone about it and lets him know that, she's there for him. That's what happened in the flashback I'm explaining. And so Pamela takes the paperwork so it can be finalized. And as soon as she leaves, Danny goes to grab her phone. And I felt like she didn't call him, but then she called him later only to get his voicemail. And I was like, hey, maybe she just wanted to check on him. I'm going to give my girl some grace, okay? Or maybe she could have been calling. No, it was Bill's voicemail. At first, I was trying to give it a benefit of the doubt and say maybe it could have been Andre, but and then we see Ted who happens to be on the phone trying to find a temp when Eva comes back in to reclaim her job. And so she lets him know that if he's willing to trust her, she knows she can get the job done even better than Kat. And I don't know if anyone else peeped this or felt a way about this. I don't necessarily think it's Ted or the parents pitting the girls against each other. When I say girls, I mean Eva and Kat. However, I think it's weird AF that you see these two ladies in competition and you're constantly like, oh, well, you got to do this like Kat, or you need to like, don't you think that just adds to it? Am I tripping? Is it me? I don't know. I just feel like they're letting it cook. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're doing right now. But yeah, y'all. So that was episode 79 of Beyond the Gates. Putting a hard stop here. And then let's jump into episode 80, which is Tuesday's episode. So Kat has run into Ted and Eva as they're coming to the country club. They were supposed to have dinner. And she points out that, look, Eva is just taking over everything that I used to do. So Ted says that he's been trying to reach her so that he could tell her about Eva taking over her position himself. And he assumed that, she found out through the staff because Eva is just such a great fit. And Kat tells him, no, they're just too scared to tell their boss, the man that signs their check, that his illegitimate daughter isn't the person, okay? And so Ted explains, look, the staff is making Eva feel welcome. And yeah, Kat's like, yeah, and things are moving like I was never there. Meanwhile, Eva is just smirking, little nasty, okay. So Ted tells her that the staff can miss her and support Eva at the same time, just like he can love both his daughters at the same time. And so Kat is like, Dad, can you just be alone for a minute? I mean, I know that you miss mom, but you can't think hiring Eva is a good idea when she still has ties to Leslie. And I said, somebody please listen to this girl for once, please. So Ted is trying to assure her, look, I know what I'm doing. And, Eva is free of pick six because he called her Dana. So I just got to call her the woman by many names, pick six. Okay. So basically, Kat said, you cannot believe that when her and Leslie, Dana, pick six are the evil version of basically mom and me. Okay. And they are forever tied together. Okay. And Eva says, I'm not going to turn my back on my mom completely. But I am done going down that messy road with her. Kat says, girl, bye. You knew what Pick Six did to Laura, and you were covering for her instead of turning her in. And so Ted is like, what are you talking about? And this is when I said, Kat, you might be talking too much. So Eva tells Ted that she had her suspicions, but so did the police, and they didn't find nothing. And Kat tells her, well, that's a bold-faced lie. And you had Leslie's fate in the palm of your hand, and you chose wrong. So Eva asked Kat, well, what did I have, Kat? What could I have possibly given the police? Because we all know she knows that Kat is the one that went and got the helmet, right? So let's move over to Haley, who has walked into Bill's office, and Caroline shares that, oh, girl, Bill left a while ago. So Bill is actually over at Danny's, okay? He comes staggering into her house for a drink, or at least that's what he tries to make it seem like. And they're talking about his new obsession with this cane, and Danny suggests that he have Chelsea hook it up for him. And so Bill thanks her for the drink and tells Danny that Haley poured out their entire bar. And Danny lets Bill know, well, I don't really care to hear about your child bride trying to keep you alive. So she's like, why are you really here? And Haley so back over at the office, Haley is telling Caroline that, well, I'm going to go try to, beat Bill home before he tries to eat or drink anything he's not supposed to. And so Vernon happens to walk into Bill's office at this time and says that he and Bill have an appointment. And so Caroline says, well, I ain't got nothing on Bill's calendar. And Vernon said, well, I'm early, but Bill wouldn't miss this for the world. Okay. And now back at Danny, Bill lets her know that, look, no one knows me better than you. Okay. And he said, I was trapped in my body and mind in that hospital. And he tells her when she walked into that room and read him, he said that ever since she took his hand and willed him back to health, even when she didn't have to, He admits he wronged her, and that's why he's there. And I ain't even gonna hold y'all. I really enjoyed just all of this Bill and Danny scene. All of this Bill and Danny scene. I really did. There clearly is still love there, but I appreciated him being honest with her. We'll get into that, right? So Smitty is deep into this investigation with Malone. And so Martin is trying to convince him that, you're not really going to win any prizes for these good cop, bad cop stories. And Smitty says, well, exposing bad cops is the reason I even became a reporter, and says Malone's story is just getting deeper by the minute. And so Martin is like, well, what are you learning? And so Smitty was like, well, I don't know if I should tell you, because last time I mentioned Malone, you had one of your little episodes, a little, that he do. Okay. So Martin tries to, shrug it off like, oh, they come and go. And so Smitty asked him if he called the psychologist, and Martin lies and says that he did. Now, Smitty tells him that, look, things aren't adding up with Malone, and his earnings ain't matching the paper trail. And so Martin wants to know, well, how much? And so Smitty's like, yo, it's $500,000. And so he asked, well, how did you find that out? And so he was like, oh, I got sources, my eye in the sky ain't stirred me wrong yet. You know what I'm saying? And Martin tells Smitty, I don't like you working on this. And so Smitty's like, why? There's no connection to us or your job. And Martin said, look, I got a bad feeling about what could happen if Malone feels backed into a corner. So leave it the hell alone. So Smitty is like, what is going on with you? And he's saying, what is it about Malone? And he keeps begging Martin to talk to him when Martin gets a text. And of course, he does what he normally does. And he uses his excuse to run out of the door and tell Smitty to drop the story because it's not worth their future. And I said, you just do not know how to not be a terrible husband, do you, Martin? And can I just say how Martin is very handsome? I do think Martin is very handsome. But he's a handsome, horrible husband. Okay. Now, Naomi is giving Jacob a massage. This is kind of cute. Okay. Jacob, the actress that plays Naomi, I think her name is Ariel. I can't remember her last name. I think that's her name. But she had posted a reel with her and Jacob. And I was like, this man, I guess, but when they like him off the shot, it's really fine. But whenever he get up on the screen, I still think he's fine, but it's the deputy do good. Shout out to Elaine that throws it off for me, right? So he's telling her everything that's going on with the department and his father, and sharing what he learned from Smitty, but not telling her that it's Smitty, and how basically he feels like Malone fooled his daddy, and now Malone might get caught up, and Elon might get caught up with it because he didn't catch it, or looks like he may be in on it. And that was pretty much them. And I will say I did see someone on Blue Sky talking about it today, and they were talking about how they wish that they could get more from the Naomi and Jacob scenes. And I can kind of agree. I would like to see more of them as a couple and how they operate outside of double dates with DNA and him being on the job and her, doing her lawyer thing. But that's just me. Y'all give me your opinion. So Vernon happens to, so back at Bill's office, Vernon happens to walk into the office and he's greeted by Tomas. So of course Vernon, remembers him from, dating Cat or whatever. And Tomas is confused why he's there late night. And so then Elon walks in, and so Vernon introduces him to Tomas, and Elon tries to get Tomas to go away. And so Tomas is like, yeah, I do got dinner plans with Kat. And so Vernon tells him, well, and by the way, don't mention that you saw me here. Don't do that. Okay. And so Tomas asked Caroline, well, why on the way out? He's like, why are Vernon and Elon meeting with Bill after hours? And Caroline said, look, must mean the Duprees are in trouble. So Joey and then Malone show up, and I said, well, the gang's all here. Okay. And they're like, well, where is Martin? And so Vernon's like, he ain't gonna be here. We keeping him out of it because he can't deal right now, right? And so then they discuss the bigoted busboy blackmailing Martin, and the secret potentially being exposed by Smitty. And so basically Elon and Vernon agree. Well, you know what? Elon said, I got Jacob. Vernon and Martin will handle Smitty. All right. Danny. So back at Danny's house, Danny tells Bill, look, I need to be clear about what you're saying. And so Bill tells her, I'm sorry, but I'm not coming back to you. So Danny said, but you weren't invited. And he tells her, I choose Haley. And he said, but I do regret how I left you. I said, yes, accountability. He said, looking back, he doesn't know how to explain himself and says that he felt trapped, and Danny seemed oblivious to it all. And so Danny says, I knew because I know you, and I just thought it was a storm that we would get over. But unfortunately, the storm's name was Haley, right? And so Danny admits, I thought you were just going through some midlife crisis and everything was going to be good. And then you ran away to her. And Bill said, I told myself that our love had died years ago. And I thought you were just holding on to me for show. He said, but I realized I told myself that to not have, so I wouldn't have to face the hurt that I caused you. I said, yes, Bill. And he said, I was the one going through the motions for years, and I never planned to leave you. I thought I would just keep going on, and one day I just couldn't anymore. And she's like, oh yeah, because Haley came along. And Bill said, nah, it was long before Haley. It was a long time coming. And shout out to Elaine, because Elaine has said this before in the membership. She was like, what is it? Why was just Bill so nasty to her the way he did her? It was just real ridiculous when he was the one that left her. And so I guess we kind of have an answer to that. And so Danny was like, well, damn, you couldn't have gave me a hint. And tells Bill that, you wrecked me. And he tells Danny that he sees her pain now, and he admits he could have handled things differently. And so he admits to being a coward and tells her he's truly sorry for all of it. Bill knows that his apology isn't fair and realizes that, Danny is finally getting back on solid ground. And now here he is reopening wounds and stuff, right? And so Danny said, you know what? Nah, I've been waiting a real long time to hear you say that. And says, I felt gaslit. You made me feel like I was making this whole relationship and marriage up. And and I felt like it was something that I did. And that's why I'm happy they had this conversation, because she needed to hear that. Even though Andre told her, everybody's been telling her, she needed to hear that it didn't have, I mean, it's a marriage, right? It takes two people, but his betrayal was not on her. And I was happy that that she had that aha moment, right? So she asked, well, what happened today that made you come all the way over here? So Bill lets her know that there's a case from the past that has come back to give him grief. And so Danny was like, oh, so you think you made a mistake? And Bill said, I'm done. I'm done with accountability for the night. Okay. So Danny said, look, I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you didn't, expire on us. Okay. And so Bill said, well, what are the odds that we can, keep this going? Danny said, I'm gonna be honest with you. You got a baby on the way, a new wife, and I wish I could promise you that it would be all sweetness and light. But she said, I gotta self-protect, okay? But I'm just happy that you didn't expire, okay? And so then Bill hobbles out, and Danny gets emotional, right? So then let's jump back to the country club where Eva and Kat are going back and forth. So Eva accuses Kat of twisting her words. Kat is accusing her of covering for her mother. Finally, Ted puts a stop to it and tells them that if they can leave pick 6 out of the equation, they would see that they're not as far apart as they think. I said, oh, no, we're not doing this, Ted. No, we're not. And so he tells them, I see y'all in each other. And Ted invites Kat to have dinner with him and Eva. And Kat said, I got a date with my boyfriend, Tomas. Okay. She had to rub that in Eva's face. And so Ted asked Eva to so Kat leaves, and so Ted is like, please just keep trying with Kat, And so he walks into the dining room when he spots the bigoted busboy. And so suddenly he's like, Eva, my bad, I gotta go. And she's like, you ain't getting no text or phone call or nothing. And he was like, yeah, you know what, I forgot about something I had to do. and he runs out. All right. Smitty and Jacob have met at Off Regine's, and Smitty is telling him how Martin has a reaction every time that he mentions Malone, and now he wants him off the story. So he thinks that Martin knows something about Malone, but is afraid of him as well. Then he shares about the visions that Martin's been having and how he remembered the night Martin went to the this political event and came home after having a flat tire and he was in different clothes. And so Jacob was like, "And what did Martin say?" And Smitty was like, "Oh, well, I just dropped it." He was like, "What the hell? What is on you?" So Smitty knows that something happened that night, and Jacob starts, trying to piece things together. And he tells Smitty that, maybe you reaching a little bit. And I said, not calling Smitty out for throwing his line out there, okay? And so Smitty says, "Yeah, I thought so too, until I made the connection that night that this was 2 years ago, and shortly after, Malone had that money in his bank account." So Jacob is trying to get to the bottom of how he thinks Martin may be involved. And then Smitty's like, "Look, I'm not sure," but says that, "Look, if Malone is a threat to Martin, then I plan to take the ass down." Okay. Not on my watch. All right. Now, Tomas. Ooh, this made me so mad. Princess. Woo, girl. Woo. Tomas gotta go. I'm sure Tassan would agree with me. I'm sure Elaine would agree with me. I'm sure there's several of y'all, if I can name all of y'all, that would be up here agreeing with me, okay? So let's get into it. So Tomas shows up for dinner with Kat, all right? So she tells him she wants the night to be all about them, no drama, no work, none of that stuff, right? They walk into the dining room where Eva is there eating alone because remember Ted left her there dolo. So Tomas notices Eva across the room and can't stay focused. Kat's trying to talk to him. She done had this whole beautiful menu put together, inspired by some cuisine he had in Spain that he told her about. And yeah, he just too busy making eyes at Eva. So, he does compliment her efforts, and Kat tells him that, he meets every moment for her. Then Eva decides that it would be a good idea to come over and say hello. And so then he asked her about the book that she was reading, because we know they have this love for these anime romance novels or whatever they reading, okay? And so, of course, Kat is irritated because she just told Eva that she had this date with Tomas. So then, so once Eva excuses herself, or Kat kindly tells her to kick rocks, Tomas tries to scold her for being mean. Can I tell you how quick I would have got up and left that table? I was done. Um, and so Kat was like, "Don't let that take our moment away." And so Moss was like, "Well, she was just trying to be nice." And Kat responds, "And I'm Scissor." I said, "Nice." Kat is so cute. I love her. She tells Tomas that, "Look, I already told Eva about the special evening and she came over to crash it." And so then she gets mad at Tomas for always protecting her. And so finally Tomas was like, "Oh, I'm up." So he finally, he eventually apologizes and said, "I didn't make it no better by engaging her about this book." And so she tells Tomas that, "Look, I'm tired of waiting." And she wants tonight to be her first time. And I said, "Kat, after he just did that, where's your sense of discernment?" I don't know. Anyway, so Haley has come over to Danny's and let her know that she knows Bill was there. And she tells her that, "I hope you won't over here getting no nostalgic feelings thinking he was coming back to you." And Danny said, "Look, girl, I could have, and I could sit here and reminisce on what we built." She said, "However, I realized that, I see myself in you, Haley. And I know what it's like to be panicked about where my man is at." Okay. So Danny tells, and so she tells her, "I was there a year ago." And she said, "And now here you are, only 6 months in with a baby." I said, "Oh." So Haley claims, "Oh, I'm secure in my marriage. And, that bit you're old. And basically that's why Bill got tired of you." And Danny lets her know, "Look, I'm the roller coaster on top of the skyscraper, sweetie. I was the ride of Bill's life. And I mean more than just the bedroom. I said, that's right. So Haley starts bragging about, how, oh, well, now I'm carrying Bill's baby and being able to have the same bond that she has because, she has the girls. Um, and Danny warns her that 9 months is a long time and Bill will probably lose interest in your ass. And so Haley tells her, well, if you're waiting for my husband to come back to you, you'll die waiting. Okay. And then Haley kneels over in pain. And so Danny accuses her, so now you're being over the top. And she said, oh, that hurt the imaginary fetus. I said, yes. I'm sorry. I feel no ways tired, especially the way Haley was in there talking to Danny. What you see is what you get, okay? Back at Bill's office, Malone believes that Bill might have went rogue and went on the run and suggests that maybe we all need to do the same thing. So Joey's reminding him that look, that basically can't happen. And so Ted walks in and lets him know that he's there to let Bill know that he had seen the bigoted busboy. But he realizes by Vernon's reaction that he was aware that the busboy is back as well. And so he was like, well, y'all was just getting ready to make moves without me. And Vernon was like, well, you were a little hesitant last time. And Ted said, well, look, I had to do what I had to do then, but I'm going to do, but now I'm going to do whatever to protect my son. So Bill arrives and Vernon warns that, look, Ted, if you stay involved, if you stay in this office, you in it. Okay. And Ted said, well, why are we doing this with Bill? I ain't trying to be indebted to this man. And so Joey says, look, we all in this together, like Ocean's 11. Okay. And so Ted agrees, look, I'm on board. I'm all in it. Okay. To win it. So Martin walks in and he's immediately upset to see Bill and his father there. And Vernon lets Martin know that basically Ted has known the truth from the beginning. So Martin starts spazzing out about how things will never be all right. Okay. And I said, please send this boy to some type of facility with some padded walls. Okay. And Elon asked Martin if Vernon didn't invite him, well, how did you know what was going on here? And he was like, well, I was actually coming to see Bill. But he said, y'all, this is too much. This is too much. So he tells Vernon, I don't want you fighting my battles, granddad. I need to handle this myself. I'm a man. Okay. And so Malone speaks up and said, yeah, that's right. And then next thing we know, we see Martin. And so Bill said, get that out of here. And so they plan to fill Ted. And so Ted takes Martin out because he's still, and they said, we'll fill Ted in when he get back. And yeah, y'all, that was episode 80 of Beyond the Gates. So hopefully I made it enjoyable for you. But if you guys have not already, please make sure that you hit that like button. Make sure that you guys comment. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell. Also, make sure you're following us on all the platforms. That's the Blue Sky, the IG, the Facebook, and TikTok. And I ain't even gonna hold y'all. I've literally been on the fence. And don't judge me if I do, y'all. Only because for viewership reasons, I'm actually thinking about going back on Twitter, opening up my Twitter account again for business, obviously, Shadeinthecity, but I'm thinking about it. And it's just a lot of stuff that goes on over there. Not that I don't love Blue Sky, but and I did get the communities thing up and running on my phone. So be looking out for posts there on the community in the communities tab. I'm excited. But yeah, y'all, I will catch y'all tomorrow for episode 81. Y'all have a wonderful what's today? Oh, I will catch y'all tomorrow for episode 81. Have a wonderful, safe, happy hump day. Bye-bye.